Yeah, I mean, flexible working, I think, is definitely a trend that I think is growing within, certainly within the UK. It does obviously depend on quite a lot of different company cultures and structures and job roles. In many roles, you need to be in the office. Administration, perhaps, you need to actually be within a certain group, doing the accounts and invoicing and so forth. It's tricky to do that remotely. It's getting better with technology, whether it's Xero or QuickBooks or Sage systems. It's that on that side, but it really does depend on your role. So you've got to start about what is your role within the company and what type of company you've already got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an interesting answer. And I think one of the you sort of have to look at the drivers behind it and sort of what's driving that behaviour. Is it people are feeling too shackled and they're wanting to do other things and achieve other things, and some of it quite often comes back to work-life balance. So as an employer, if you're trying to ensure there's that work-life balance, but it's not detrimental to the business, because people need to sometimes be part of a team and feel part of a team, and that's quite important for a lot of people. Then it's how do you strike that balance between them feeling part of a team, either remotely or actually physically in the place. But then a lot of people like to travel, and it's not always possible to do that necessarily on weekends. So there's some job roles, and I don't know how big a percentage this is, but there's some job roles where literally you could work from anywhere. Sort of in terms of operating this business, we know when we get to a certain point in the future, there's a lot of people who could actually work from anywhere, and particularly because we're being a global company, being business travel, meetings, events, that can happen anywhere on the globe, and therefore people with a specific experience can sit anywhere in any place at any time, and people are judged essentially on certain KPIs and getting the job done. So I think more and more employers are starting to look at this flexibility and how it ties into this whole theme of work-life balance. And that was a big driver for Ricardo Semler, the CEO of a Brazilian company, Semco, who's very well known in some circles because he did an excellent TED talk which was called How to Run a Company with Almost No Rules. And it's a fascinating talk, and he's written a couple of books, one called Maverick and another called The 7-Day Week. The latter I've read. And he has a lot of interesting ideas which I think would strike fear into most big corporations, in terms of trying to implement some of the strategies that he's gone about. But ultimately most of it's about trust, and if you trust your employees to actually get on and do the job, then I think there's no reason why you can't build in the kind of flexibility people are looking for these days.
Mm-hmm.
It can do. I mean, I worked from home yesterday myself, and I'm an employee like anybody else, and I can be prone to distraction. And sometimes the feeling is, if you're at home, what are they doing? Are they lounging around, sat watching TV? Well, no. If you're an adult and you trust somebody, then you expect them to do what's needed. And I was incredibly productive yesterday at home because I had zero distractions. Whereas sometimes in the office, all you get is distractions.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the founders of the company, so you'd expect us to be a little bit more engaged in terms of getting the job done. But I don't really think that goes any differently for employees who are wanting to build a career and are adult, essentially, about their own career goals and what they want to achieve.
I think it does depend, and you've got to put your own trust in your own judgment of people you hire. I mean, if you're worried as a manager or business owner that your staff are at home not doing what they should be doing, then you've employed the wrong people. So I think it's very important to put the trust into your employees, and usually it will be returned. There are obviously cases where sometimes it doesn't for whatever reason, but that's what you've got to aim for as a business manager or owner. I think absolutely. I think it's more interesting, I think, for the business and for the employee, the flexible hours part of it, rather than just either working from home or not working from home. It's why put the stress on your staff of coming in through the peak hours of 9 to 5 or whatever it might be in your particular location. If they are coming a bit further from outside and the trains are notoriously unreliable, why not let them come in at 10 and they finish later on certain days? Gives that flexibility, because otherwise your staff are coming in stressed and sitting down and potentially talking to your clients stressed, which is not a good thing. So why not let them come in later? or let them do an hour's admin work at home and then come in outside the peak hours. It makes perfect sense to me. Or conversely, come in early. Obviously, a lot of the city businesses that we work around us here in the City of London. Quite often, a lot of the sales and fund managers and traders are starting at 7. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're coming in between 6 and 7, partly for that reason, because it's a lot quicker to get in and they're less stressful, and the markets are opening around the world at different times. And I think it works very well for that. And whereas the majority of people, because of the 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 mentality, they're all piling in at the same time, super stressed. I just think it's unnecessary.
And to further that point, actually, it's quite a political, economic and social issue. So if you think about the burden on public transport, the burden on housing in big cities, and I don't know the particular percentages, but I think that there's a huge majority of people are going to be living in cities around the world within the next 10 to 20 years. More and more people are migrating out of the countryside. And that's clearly putting a burden on a lot of public services. So, as an employer, if you can employ people more virtually and you don't expect them to be in the office, then that's actually taking away some of that burden where you're not expecting people to come in, which is sort of akin to the point Toby's making in terms of stretching that out, but it's also slightly different because you're not expecting people necessarily to be geographically in the same place. And I think technology has enabled that more and more. Some technology is still not there in terms of if we think about webinars or trying to host meetings online can be notoriously difficult, and we strongly believe, even as a technology company, in face-to-face. But for face-to-face meetings, they don't need to happen daily. And if you look at your business and your roles, and again we go back to how you formulate teams, people can still feel bonded and part of a team if they have the same sense of purpose. There's that clear communication in terms of purpose and objectives, and they still come together once in a while. It doesn't have to be daily. So there's a number of things where companies, I think, can rethink the way they operate and achieve more objectives that are sort of just beyond the work-life balance of their employees, and actually has a social, economic, political sort of impact.